It's 11:09.
All right. Thank you, Jen. Welcome to Into the Night with me, Sean Kelly. Our guest, Trish, this will be on shortly. We just got done doing a 2 hour show, and I guess she had to get some water. You know what I mean? Um, that voice in the back here is my brother, if you hear it. But so tonight we're going to talk with Trish, and we're going to see, get to know her a little bit more. Um, so um, I'm doing okay. Last week I told you that I started taking antidepressant and medicine, and this really has helped me out a lot. I'm not so. Hi, Joni. How are you? I can't type into the chat, so hi. But now I can. And they're working after a week. It's been really helping me out a lot. Um, just did a investigation back last past Saturday, and I went to a private residence place, and she has a lot of ghostly things happening to her. Um, and so we went there. Hi, Jay. How are you? And so I went there, and it was a nice little investigation. See, a lot of groups that I know of really like to, not have the participants, the people at the house, the clients, be in the house. Um, but my group, PPS, we strongly suggest that the people who live there, who are our clients, that they just stick around. Um, so it's like, so we had a little mini mitigation, and it turned out great. We got not a lot of um, evidence, but see, in the paranormal field, and whenever you go do a paranormal show, um, it's a lot have to do with, you know, um, paranormal experiences. Like we weren't really getting no hits off the K2 meter. Excuse me. And hey, Gene, how are you, babe? Um, so, and not really too much in video, not too much in audio, but what the big thing was personal experiences, and so it turned out pretty good. Um, but that's how we got coming up at the Marco's restaurant down in Uniontown. There's a ghost walk going on, and this will be our 10th year down there. Uniontown, Pennsylvania. Hey, Trish.
Hey.
Hey, there you are. Hey, Trish is here. I'm just telling the people about our Uniontown deal over the weekend, coming up Friday and Saturday. It's a ghost walk down there, and so we're really looking forward to that. How you doing, Trish? Good evening.
I'm good. Good.
Thank you for being on the show tonight.
Yes, finally.
Yeah, I know. 3 times the charm. It is a charm. Yeah, I when you first came on, when I first met you, when you started Chasing Prophecy, I was intrigued by your bio. Okay, and is it safe to say that you are a witch?
Well, I guess. I mean, I'm pagan. I practice those beliefs. I think it's in my blood. You know, I kind of came by it naturally in life.
Okay.
So.
And the reason why, because like my very first show I wanted to, my dear friend Kimmy, who's in the coven, she's like the head priestess or whatever. She couldn't make it for 2 weeks, and what I really wanted to start the show off is on paganism, witches and stuff like that. Can you please give me your viewpoint on paganism and being, or in the witches, practicing whatever?
Well, there's like paganism is really kind of a broad umbrella term for many different types of beliefs in the pagan community. So I believe, I want to say there's, gosh, like 9 different forms of pagan. And that has to do with what a person, what gods they believe in or worship. Or there's some pagans that believe in one god and other kind of ascended masters. There's different, there's so many different, there's the heathens, there's the, it's all kind of an umbrella term, kind of like Christianity. And then it branches off into, you have like Baptist and Methodist and Presbyterian and all of that. So
Okay.
paganism is just kind of a broad term for many different beliefs. Now, Wicca is more modern, and that's really kind of a very broad and misinterpreted term as well, because there's all of these new age, beliefs as far as Wicca goes. So I think a lot of people get confused as far as what, and most people don't even know the difference anyways. They just think all witches are the same. So,
Right.
so that's kind of been, I still know I'm kind of solitary. I don't belong to a coven. I don't, it has been something that I naturally gravitated towards from the time I was a little girl. I 100%, I grew up in the mountains in the middle of a forest. And so innately knowing about plants and herbs and animals and the elements just came naturally to me. Something that, and maybe, everybody teases it's because I'm a redhead. Maybe so. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe there's something to that. But so there wasn't ever really, my grandmother on my father's side passed away when he was a teenager, and the same with my other grandparents. They passed away when I was younger. So, and as far as my family, it's not something, my mom or dad, it wasn't something that they practiced. So it's not something that was taught to me, I guess, in a traditional way that a lot of witches, how they come by, by learning, I guess, or instructed. But as we were speaking about on the other show, it's I automatically started doing things I didn't even realize I was doing. For instance, I made this juniper berry soap last year at this time. It's been sitting on my sink, as a decorative soap bar since last October, probably. And I just started using it again. Well, I forgot that juniper berries correspond with the month of October.
Okay.
So there's things like that every day that I don't even realize I'm doing. And the same thing with working with different deities and goddesses and things like that.
Is there one certain goddess that you kind of work with?
Oh gosh, I think there's numerous ones that I've gravitated towards more so than others, for many reasons. But I also think it has to do with the time of year and the different equinoxes and things like that, because it's kind of like spirit animals and things like that. They come into your life at the point when you need them. So, I always associated things like that, even as a little girl. Mary Poppins, for example, she was people think of her as like a fairy, or like the fairy godmother in any of the Disney movies and things like that. It's kind of the same thing. I thought of it in that way when I was younger, because it's not always the ones that you want to work with that come into your life. It's the ones that you need at the
Okay.
so
Now, do they come to you in need, or do you ask the goddesses to come to you? How does that work?
um I think before I knew any better, they came to me in need.
Okay.
Now that I've studied and I've learned more throughout the years, um, I have started getting more into working with different ones that I guess intentionally, with a purpose. So
Okay. Now, like I did a lot of research, and I was looking at the total amount of witches that were persecuted, a long, long, long time ago. And I know the Salem witch trials, they had two girls that would go around and say, she's a witch, and then they would burn them. Um, Now, I know this is going to be like a kind of a dumb question, but why do you think at that period of time that even now, even today, that witches get a bad deal? People think they're bad. Why? I mean, why do you think that?
well, it's such the way witches have been portrayed throughout history. For one, movies and books and social media, even to this day, um, there's so many different groups that are protected by slander and everything like that. You never hear that about witches. You never hear anyone say
Right,
anything about making fun of witches, around Halloween or anything like that, which technically it has been around almost longer than most. That's been around since the Egyptian times.
right,
So and in every culture, in the African countries, you still have the hoodoo and the voodoo and things like that. You still have there's different in the Eastern cultures. That's been thousands of years,
right.
that's been around. So it's interesting to me that it's still very much, it's something that people, because I think they don't know a lot about the history or the origins, that it scares people. It's
Okay.
another one of those things, that due to lack of knowledge,
Hmm.
um, it's a fear.
Do you think it should be taught in schools? And since everybody's learning different religions now, and I consider Wicca a religion, okay,
Absolutely.
should it not be? It should be taught in school. What's your thought on that?
I think that the thing that scares people about witches is that they might have more power over the person to harm them.
Okay.
Um, because that's how they've been portrayed. Witches were always the ones in movies to eat children and you know
Hansel and Gretel.
human
Huh?
sacrifices and all of this stuff, and curse people and things like that. And
Mhm.
and sure, I mean, that probably still goes on, but I can tell you that 100% of the witches that I know in this day and age are some of the most peaceful, loving,
Yes.
because even in Wicca, the creed is harm to none.
Right.
So we're more nature and earth based, rather than and peace loving, rather than harming people. So
Well, being in the business when I started PPS, I got to go to different religions, different type of people, and the witches, they really, really, really took me in. they knew right off the bat I did not want to be a witch. Okay, but they taught me, and they are the, like you said, are the most down to earth people, and I'm so grateful that they're my friends. It's not that I can go, hey, cast a spell on this girl so I can like her. You know what I mean? Or she'll love me or whatever. Not casting spells, but to sit down and actually talk to them. And if I'm not mistaken, right, being a witch back in the 1600s during the Salem area, they were mainly like healers. Is that true?
Yeah.
And
And most witches are, and like I said, most witches that I know, it has nothing to do with, it's not something that we chose.
right,
It's something just like shamans and things like that. It's something that um, is in our blood. It's something. Yes, I agree. There are people that study it and make that choice and things like that. But for the most part, the witches that I know, it just came to them naturally, and then they sought out other people to kind of gain more clarity and have a support system because it is so taboo. And I think a lot of people misconstrue general witchcraft with black magic and things like that. And there's most modern day witches that I know anyways, absolutely would never curse or cast a spell on someone because that's against someone's free will. And we
right,
don't, that would be against our beliefs. I don't believe in manipulating
right,
anyone else's free will. So as far as, a lot of these new age witches and things and you learn your lesson quickly, believe me, because people that do like love spells or things like that, careful what you wish for, because if it works, you might have a stalker or say
right,
someone, and this is the mistake a lot of people make too. A lot of younger witches, they say someone wanted to lose weight, and
right.
they try a spell to lose weight, but they don't specify how they're going to lose weight and end
Okay,
up losing an arm or something. That's still
okay.
weight,
Hmm.
or say they do a spell for money
Right,
and they don't specify how they're going to get that money or that they don't want to harm anyone in the process. And they get the money because someone in their family dies. Well,
uh,
they still got the money.
right,
It's so, and I think that has a lot to do with lessons in life as well. We all learn that way. So usually the hard way, um,
hmm,
but it's no different in witchcraft and your intentions. And I don't think there's any difference in, so in Christianity, I mean, and I was Christian for a very long time. And I still believe in God, I still believe even Jesus as an ascended master. I know tons of witches that work with him as far as
hmm.
that goes. But I think it's the intention behind it. Because with anything, even with praying, regardless of who you're praying to,
Right,
if the intention is strong enough, then the mind's a powerful thing, you know.
right,
So that's basically, there is no different when people talk about witches doing black magic all the time or this or that or whatever. That is no different than a person even thinking in their mind that they hate somebody or wishing someone dead just in passing,
right.
or saying break a leg, things like that. You're speaking a curse.
Hmm.
You're thinking a curse. That's the same thing. That's no different.
Oh, interesting.
The only difference as far as witches go, like if I were to do a self-healing spell or something and use herbs or fire, water, one of the elements, that's just increasing the power behind that intention.
Okay, awesome. Now, Jean, my Jean, she's in my group. She's like my sis. She's been with me for a long time. And she says, it needs to be recognized as a religion.
Mm-hmm.
That's her thought. And my friend Joni, she says people are afraid of things they don't understand, which is
Yeah.
true too. Now I have a couple more questions, and then hopefully we can get into some elementals. Um, Now, I hear whenever I tell people that I'm friends with witches or the topic is brought up, some say they ask me, is there a white witch and a black witch, or a witch is a witch is a witch? Do you
That's
understand that
that's the
question?
same as a Christian who sins. You
Okay,
know,
right.
I've
No,
known
I keep hearing that.
plenty Christians that have, I don't know, beat somebody up or robbed somebody or cheated on their wives, whatever. It's the same thing. Anyone and everything has the ability to be good or bad. It's
Hmm.
just what your beliefs, I guess. Mine personally, I don't believe in harming others. So
No, you're good. You're a good soul. You're a really good soul. Um, I will admit that you're a good person and very caring person.
well, I don't think anyone or anything in this universe anyways likes to be manipulated, and that's basically with anything, with any religion, with any um, government, whatever it is, witchcraft. If you're trying to use your power negatively to control someone, then
Hmm.
it's not good. It's not
Right.
free will. It takes away their free will. So, and that has to do with a lot of witches I know work with the elements as far as the weather, things like that. There's a difference between when you do that and calling in the wind or asking it to do something
Hmm.
and demanding it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
That. Thank you for that. And one more question on witches. They have a holiday coming up, and can you to our listeners who don't know about the holiday, can you give a little background and what the name of the holiday is?
Samhain, yes. A lot of people pronounce it Samhain or
Yeah,
something.
that's what I do. I say that. Yeah.
No, it's pronounced Samhain. It's October 31st through November 1st traditionally. It's actually been celebrated as Samhain in many different cultures. I'm more familiar with obviously with the Irish and the Celtic beliefs because that's more of my roots. Um, but yeah, it's basically it's one of the four fire festivals of the year. It's welcoming the harvest and it's the beginning of the dark half of the year. So
Hmm.
um, it's a time when I think it marks the halfway point between the winter solstice and
Okay.
the fall equinox. So it's a time when the barrier is much thinner as well to honor your ancestors and honor the dead. Um, and so on Halloween, that was a time they would in villages um, after the harvest they would light big bonfires in the middle of town and have a celebration and a feast and sacrifice a cow, things like that. um, and the bonfire would signify protecting the village, from
Hmm.
evil and from harm and things like that. And each of the villagers would take one of like a log from the bonfire to their own house to light their own fire
Oh wow.
and
Okay.
keep it so that if you think about these things, there's so many things that go back to paganism. Even if you think back to even like the Olympics and stuff, keeping the fire,
Hmm.
it's all we do rituals every single day and people just don't realize that's what they're doing. You take a
Right.
shower, you brush your teeth, you wash your hands, and all these things, you wash your hands of it, all these things um originated primarily from that. Even Christmas and stuff coming up was originally a pagan holiday. So
Didn't Christianity took part of the pagan Christmas, Santa Claus of some sort?
mhm.
Yeah.
And
Why?
the trees too. So in during Christmas time, pagans believed that's when you bring in a tree, which is nature, into your home. And pine is um, the aroma of pine, burning pine, things like that, is very healing and to your lungs even, and your mental health during the dark months.
Hmm.
So that was, I guess, the origination of the trees, and then it was adapted from there.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to share a story with you. We'll go off the subject here a little bit. When I got a divorce, I was living over in Pleasant Hills in an apartment duplex, and outside in different areas they built like gardens. Okay, they planted like fruits and vegetables and plants and flowers and stuff like that. So one night I was out there, right just about dusk, and I had my son. He was like what 8 years old at the time, and we're sitting there because they had benches and you can see, sit there and enjoy the garden. Well, all of a sudden he says to me, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, look, it's lightning bugs." Okay, lightning bugs. And I was looking and I'm thinking, wait a minute, they're not green, but they're white, bright, really bright, really bright. I said, I don't know, Paul, because it wasn't a time when lightning bugs would come out. You know what I mean? It was like April or something. And then the next morning, I went back out there with him and I saw a perfect ring of mushrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you were growing up in the forest in the wilderness, did you ever experience something like that?
Absolutely. Gosh, even to this day, which is interesting that, our last guest on Chasing Prophecy said that I was probably a fairy in a
Yeah.
past life, because I can't tell you how many times I've been protected in the forest from danger, from wild animals, and then after the fact, I would notice I'm standing in a fairy ring. And even in pictures, I have little tiny, almost like orbs in broad daylight. I
Mm,
start looking back at throughout my life, numerous pictures, and they would, now that we have iPhones and things, smartphones that'll play a live photo, I would
hmm.
play it back, and they'd be dancing around in the picture.
Right.
They've always been there. I just didn't realize it before, and so I thought that was interesting. And that's another thing with the bonfires. It's a circle, and they would dance
Hmm.
around the bonfires. And that's one of, so even with fairies, there's good fairies and there's bad fairies. There's the ones that are protective and the ones that steal babies and things. And so that's part of where the Halloween, the All Hallows Eve, and the Samhain tradition, as far as dressing up, came from, because they would dress their kids up as animals or monsters to
Hmm.
fool the fairies,
Oh,
so they
really?
would kidnap
Okay.
the children. And that's the bad ones. Like I said, there's good and bad of everything. So, but I just found I forgot his name, um, Pope Boniface,
Yeah.
in the 15th century. Originally moved Samhain, renamed it All Hallows Eve,
Hmm.
to May 13th.
Wow.
But it didn't stick. The fire festivals and everything were still celebrated, even by the Catholics, in October. So, in the ninth century, Pope Gregory moved it back to October 31st and November 1st, and declared it All Saints' Day on November 1st and All Souls' Day on November 2nd.
Oh,
So
thank
that
you for looking
became
that up.
the after All Hallows Eve, which was the day of the undead.
Hmm.
They moved to All Saints and All Souls. And the difference
Okay.
between those, in my understanding, is once the soul has ascended enough, they become worshipped on All Saints Day. So,
Right. That's pretty interesting. So with you, dealing, being in part of the fairies, um, did you study elementals like leprechauns, fairies, unicorns? But
no, I encountered them a lot.
okay.
in my life, all these things that I didn't think existed. And I never, the thing was about it, which is interesting to most people that know me, I will talk about something, and this has happened since I was a little girl. I've never been very interested in TV or movies or the news, or I don't watch that much TV. Now, after the fact, I will see something, I will experience something, and I will tell somebody I know. Or I used to tell my mom these things, I'd be in the woods and I'd come back and I would tell her, and she would say, there was a movie about that, and tell me about this movie. And then I would go watch the movie, which would
Mhm.
actually lead to a better understanding of
Oh,
what
okay.
just happened. Because to me, even in science fiction, there has to be some basis to
Right.
all of that. There's always some basis to all of it. So it actually gave me a greater understanding of what I was experiencing, because I'm like, all right, well, I saw this winged creature, whatever. Maybe there was a goblin under the bridge, or I don't know. And then
Hmm.
I would come back and I would tell someone, and they would say, oh, well, that actually, happened in this book or this movie or whatever. So then I started doing research. It wasn't before that, though.
Okay. That's pretty interesting. That is. Now I know we go down, me, Russ, and Jan. We go down to a gold mining place camp down in North Carolina, and they have one of them bridges. I swear to God, one night I walked by and I saw a little troll on the bottom of that thing. Honest to Pete.
And that's the thing, bridges, gateways, anything like crossroads, railroad tracks, doorways, those are all symbolic, even in the spirit realm, as far as ghosts and people who have passed over things. That is because it's a bridge between two different points.
Right.
I mean, like, not just a literal bridge, but it's even spiritually and metaphorically, it's a bridge between worlds. It's a gateway. It's a portal. So even these movies, going back to that you see, like Monsters Inc. and stuff, where they come out of the closet or out from under the bed. There's a basis to that, because it's true, and that's why witches protect their doorways, or don't walk under gateways in a forest, things like that, because you never know. There's
Yeah. But excuse me. But looking at that fairy ring, in that garden, that just like really impressed me. And now when like I like to go, well, not camping. I go to a hotel. That's my camping. But in the daytime or like dusk, or when I'm panning for gold, that's another hobby I do. And I look at the tree lines. I look at the lines where the hedges are, trees and stuff like that. And I do see faces in them, and I do see little things running around. So when people come
um,
up, when people come up to me and they tell me, when I tell them that I see fairies and I see gnomes and I see leprechauns or whatever, they look at me like I'm a nutcase. You know what I mean? But you know
yeah.
what? I feel like, why do I don't believe in holding everything inside me. I need to express it. I believe that, like the show with tonight with the witches. You know what I mean? I believe they need to be heard. I believe that, the gnomes, the fairies, and the leprechauns, they need to be known. I did a show about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was on the Tommy Knockers. And I had a guest on, who's a friend of mine. He's a hard rock miner, and he owns a couple mines up in Montana. And that was an interesting show. So I have no doubt in my mind. I mean, people are afraid to talk about stuff like this, and they really shouldn't be, because
Well, even to this day, we're still targeted. We are still
Mhm.
100% targeted. I guarantee there's viewers that it's the same with religions or anything that's kind of controversial. Um, and so what happens is people start becoming defensive, in which not as much nowadays, because most people are, even though, especially with Facebook and social media over the years, they've gotten pretty accustomed to agreeing to disagree with
Mm-hmm.
other people. You know, it's not like I'm perfectly capable of being friends with, I'm friends with tons of people of other religions and other beliefs, and I 100% respect that,
Right.
and as do they. But not everybody is like that. There are still hate groups. There are still people who target witches. There are still people, and again, it's out of fear or out of something they don't, you know, out of the unknown. They
Right.
don't know about it, which is interesting to me because a lot of people don't think about that. But so Jerusalem, for instance, that name means, Jeru means the gift, and Salem means peace.
Mm-hmm.
So it was always interesting when I was younger. I was like, that doesn't make any sense that Salem, you know, which all the witches
Right.
migrated to,
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to be peace, was supposed to symbolize peace. And the same, Salem is the name of, you know, Jerusalem, like the
Right.
birthplace.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting to me. And then like I've said before, the different rituals, praying is no different than any spell. You know, communion, all of those things are rituals.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the intention behind them, regardless of what religion you are, regardless of what God you believe in, or gods, or whatever. Even atheists, you know, it's the intention behind it. So yes, I'm sure there's still a huge community of witches that maybe sacrifice people, but there's other religious groups that do the same thing. You know, it's
Right. Right.
always going to be that.
Now, being that it's Halloween, we all know that the veil is really thin. Why can I have your perspective on why you think the veil's thin? Why at this time it's thin?
I live very much so by the moon cycles. So, and what planet rules not only the moon, but also that month. You
Mm-hmm.
know, every month is ruled by a different, that's why we have zodiac signs. Every day of the week is ruled by a different planet. The moon phases are ruled by different planets, and that 100% affects the way plants, animals, and humans live. And you know, for instance, with the moon, that is scientifically based on its gravitation, the axis that it's on.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's different phases that, um, you know, the new moon, for example. Well, right now, we're in the waxing gibbous, I think.
Yeah, I think.
Or sorry, no, that's day after tomorrow, right? We're in the waning. Um, so it affects everything. It affects your diet. It affects your how fast your hair grows. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's certain days you shouldn't have surgery based on the moon and what sign it's in, because each sign resonates with a different organ or body part, things like that. So I think it's no different with the spiritual realm. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think based on different planets, it's kind of like the ley lines and different parallels.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think certain times of the year, um, it's just, plus it's the darker part of the year. So
Right.
a lot in you know, in our beliefs, it's a lot of the goddesses of the underworld and things like that
Mm-hmm.
rule this time of year. So I think that's why the barrier is thinner.
That okay. Thank you for that. I mean that I've heard that for a very very long time, and you're very 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 intelligent, and you know what you're talking about. So that was one of my questions I was going to ask you last week. You know what I mean about that. Now, living out in the forest, did you encounter Bigfoot? I'm being honest about. I'm being serious about that question. Have you ever?
So there's been numerous places because I lived in upstate New York too. And I've camped and, all my life, things like that. Um, and I have never like physically seen Bigfoot, but as
Mhm.
far as hearing, or seeing footprints, things like that, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, something about upstate New York. We were good. We did a show on. It's called the Missing 411,
Hmm.
and I know that two of the hunters. Well, I know one hunter from upstate New York went and sat on a rock and he disappeared, never to be found. There was another guy up in upstate New York, and he was at his house and he left and he never came back. And
Absolutely.
um,
I think those are different. There was a place where I lived. It's actually marked by a sign now. Since I've lived there, I just saw it, online, um, in upstate New York in a park where people would lose hours of time in this specific place, in this
mhm,
specific spot. And who knows, maybe people could have disappeared there. And I think sometimes that is a division or a portal per se between worlds. And
right.
of course, you could get lost there.
So I see that that's pretty interesting because I swear like sorry, pick something up, but I've heard stories. I haven't actually seen them, but I believe that there are a lot of portals out there in the forest, out in the woods. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yes. Have you experienced it or have you seen one?
Yes. Not to where I was completely relocated, I guess.
Hmm.
Maybe just, 20, 40 yards, not like to a different town, or what I mean, not
Right.
not really far away. But absolutely, it happens a lot. You have to know, there's now I'm able to perceive the division between those lines better.
Right.
So I'm much more careful, and I'm more cautious than I would have been before. Um,
Okay. Did
but
you teach your family your beliefs, or do you
oh
respect what they
gosh,
believe in?
well, my family still doesn't. My parents and stuff. They're like, oh yeah, Trish's kind of like. But here's the thing: anybody that's around me, my friends, my family, they experience all these things too. So I've
Right.
always had witnesses. So
Hmm.
they're like, but they don't. It still scares them. Like sometimes they don't like me to talk about it and stuff because they're like, oh my gosh, so I remember that time and I was there and I don't even know what happened, but I don't want to think about it. And I'm like, well,
Right.
it happens every day in my life. And then I have friends that love it because they're like, your world is magical.
Hmm.
Things happen that never happen in our lives every time we're around you, or every time we go on a road trip, or so.
Doesn't it make you feel good though? People actually say stuff, nice things about that. Like,
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. It's people, it's friends that 100% never believed in anything like that, or in witches, or in fairies, or cryptids of any kind. And I
hmm,
wouldn't even have to say anything about it ahead of time. It would just happen,
right.
which was even more entertaining to me because I'm like, well,
Right.
like it's not like I planted that idea in their head. It's not, what I mean. It just it happens. So.
You never had like in the back of your mind, like, I told you so
Oh, all the time, all
all
the
the time.
time. But I
And
think people have to, you can never. There's some things that you can't explain in this world, no matter
hmm,
how hard you try, until someone experience. And I was the biggest skeptic of almost anything like that in life.
hmm,
Anything as far as even witchcraft, religion, thing, anything. And then ghosts, I was never a skeptic of because that's happened to me since the time I could remember, since I was little. And the same with remembering past lives. That's something
hmm.
that's always been um, always been a part of me. But as far as if you had told me that Bigfoot existed, or fairies or leprechauns or anything, or different, that you could talk to trees or plants, that they had a consciousness, which has actually been proven by science now. So it's funny that, so after all these things are coming out currently, yeah, I go back to my family, I'm like, see, and they're like, oh yeah, Trish mentioned that like 10 years ago.
So I want to thank you for being on the show. But is there, like, I know that I'm your friend on Facebook, and I see you have a photography business. Is that true, or
I
art?
do.
What kind? Would you like to tell the listeners about your little company you got there?
So it's funny, I'm an artist, and I actually quit doing any type of art for about 20 years, after so many people told me, when I graduated high school, that I would never make anything of myself as an artist, that I couldn't do it. And I was really good at it back then. I loved it. I loved writing. It was a creative outlet for me. And so I
Hmm.
just stopped for years. And then it was 3 years ago, that I think it was, 2018. I got Lyme disease and West Nile virus, actually, at the same time,
Whoa.
and I almost died. And so I started developing white lesions on my brain, and it spread to my brain and my heart. And they said that I had like 1% chance to live. And I started painting again,
Hmm.
and that was one of the things. And I would take things from nature, that I don't, I'm not saying people should take things from nature, but I would, when I was out, if I saw a leaf or a flower that was on the ground or things like that, I would take it and I would incorporate it in my art. And so that's also very healing, as far as art in itself is healing, because different colors have their own vibrations, they have different meanings, and resonate. And that's one of the things that I was talking about, that I'm kind of going in a different direction with my companies, because um, I think we subconsciously do these things all the time and don't know the meaning of them.
Right.
And after I had about 3 near-death experiences, I had a heart attack that year, which isn't the first, wasn't the last either. Um, and I went back after I started doing art again. I went back to the doctors, and they said, I don't know what you're doing, but your brain is healing from these, and my
Hmm.
body was healing. And so it became an outlet for me, and I healed myself, from that. And so what I've noticed lately, though, which is interesting, over the last year or so with my studio, a lot of my paintings or my artwork is rather, I'm clairvoyant and intuitive, but it's rather almost prophetic in my own life,
Right.
because all of those things ended up, what I would paint, say, a month before, would actually happen in
Hmm.
the world or in my own life,
Right.
a month later. So,
Awesome. Now, is how can our listeners, get connected with you and your company?
well, my current website is Savage Roots Alchemy. Um, and I named it that after I became a hypnotherapist, because alchemy is transmuting the energy of something out of nothing, basically,
Hmm.
in almost a magical way. So, um, and my motto was, it ran in the family until it ran into me, because I 100% believe that you can heal all of those generational curses. You can transmute the energy of your life. It's never too late to become who you're meant to be. So
Right.
um, I was always afraid of telling people my beliefs, telling people about even ghosts and near death experiences and witchcraft and things like that, because it is so taboo, and it is so, but I got to a point where, you know, what other people think of you is none of your business.
Exactly.
People always hold you back. So most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
your biggest haters are your greatest fans. And that's, you know, that's usually what drives people. That's what makes
Oh,
them.
wow. I didn't know that. Oh, yeah, I learned something tonight. Hey, listen, we're getting really close to time the show to be ended, but thank you so much for being on tonight.
Yes, thank you.
I'd like to have you back on again maybe next month and we can talk alchemy because I think that's a pretty interesting topic. Um,
And I'm just starting my blog and blog over again. So it hasn't
cool.
actually, it'll be off the ground by that time.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you again, Trish, and I'll see you next week. All right. Stay safe and sweet, okay?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Hello, everybody. This is the end of the show, and it was an awesome show. Trish is a co-host on Chasing Prophecy, and she answered a lot of questions that I was seeking on the witches, and I truly, truly, truly appreciate that. I really do. And I'll see you all next week. Happy hunting.